Welcome back, I'm Tedward, and today we're driving a Ferrari. This is a 2014 Ferrari 458 Spider, and thanks to Bond Group, we get to experience all of its glory today. It is a mid-engine 4.5-liter naturally aspirated V8 making 570 horsepower. It revs to 9,000 RPM thanks to its flat plane crank, its dry sump oiling system, 90-degree V, and direct injection. In the rear, you've got these gorgeous tri-tipped exhausts coming straight down the middle. I like to think that my Honda Civic Type R takes a little inspiration from this Pininfarina design. And Ferrari claims that this, and I might be wrong about this, they might be wrong about this, but they say this is the first hard-top convertible mid-engine car. Now, that doesn't count for like a front mid. We're talking rear mid-engine car. So if you can think of another hard-top convertible mid-engine rear car that came out before this, let me know, but they've got to be right about that. I can't imagine Ferrari's lying about that, but that just seems crazy. What's great is that they say that doing this hard top folding design, which we'll demonstrate in a minute, is actually lighter than using the conventional soft top setup. So pretty cool that they were able to do this, and it operates in about 14 seconds. But that is not why you buy this car. You buy this car because first, it is a work of art. This is Pininfarina at the peak of the modern era. It's really unfortunate, and I hate to say this, that Ferrari is going a different way. They've separated from Pininfarina, so their cars are now their own things. But even after 458, 488 really squared off all these beautiful curves. They took all the beautiful curvaceous pieces out of the car, and sure, they were faster with their turbocharged engines, but an NA mid-engine V8 Ferrari, mwah, bellissimo. And it is fast. It's rear-wheel drive. It has a 7-speed DCT. That's another first for Ferrari to go to a dual-clutch gearbox. It's Getrag. It is actually the same gearbox out of the SLS AMG. And probably, I don't actually know the part numbers. Maybe you guys can help me out. But I would assume that a 7-speed Getrag DCT from the 2009 era might be alarmingly similar to what BMW used in the E92 M3. So we can talk about that later. But what's cool about this is that this F1 style gearbox, which I think is kind of funny, is actually good. Prior to this, you really needed a gated manual Ferrari because the single clutch gearboxes in the older cars, they were a little clunky, and they're fun. I mean, they add a lot of drama and excitement to the car, but they're not fast and they're not great around town. So you always feel like you're slipping clutches, especially if you're like maneuvering in a parking spot and trying to back it up a hill or something wonky like that, especially at a car show. So while it was a big deal that there was no manual 458 offered, it was still a big deal that a dual clutch was. But they didn't listen to people complaining about no manual option like Porsche did with GT3. They just stuck with it, and it's been gone since F430. Speaking of F430, I think this, coming after the F430, is like one of the most major jumps from generation to generation. 360 to F430, sure, improvements, good car. Style-wise, the F430 had sort of an awkward high belt line. This still has a high belt line, but somehow proportionally just absolutely flawless. And technologically, this is a proper modern car. You actually get in it and feel like you're in the modern era. You don't feel like you're driving a classic. And I think this car, that's the beauty of this 458, is it won't be a classic driving experience for a really, really long time. Gluing us to the road up front is a 235 section tire on a 20-inch wheel with perfect 5-spoke design. I love it when Ferrari does simple things. A 5-spoke wheel in this sort of satin aluminum finish. It's perfect. This is what cars need to be. They don't need to be over the top crazy. They need to be delicate and gentle and allow the car to speak for itself. I know I'm pontificating, and I just think that the art of this vehicle is so good. It just looks as good standing still as it does in motion. Behind it are monster calipers grabbing onto carbon ceramic brakes, probably outrageously expensive to maintain. And in the rear, where all of the power is sent to 95 section tires. Inside, with this perfectly placed door handle, which I feel like that's where they got wonky when they went to 488. They moved everything. Everything's in the right place with this car, but everything got moved just a little bit. Over here, you have this vehicle is covered by Ferrari 7-year genuine maintenance program. So that means that these cars, today is still the case, you buy a Ferrari, they are maintained for 7 years. let's open up the rear. Now, this is the conceit you make when you buy a Spider and not a coupe, because, oh, that is very, very hot. You can't really see the engine, and you lose out on that incredible red intake and all the beauty that comes along with having a Ferrari covered in glass like it's the Pope laying in state. But it's a small price to pay to be able to hear this with all of the exhaust and the roof down. It's wonderful. Up here, you've got two buttons, one for your fuel filler over there and one for the frunk. Let's see. There we go. Up here. Okay, you've got your red Ferrari duffel bag with a car cover. You've got a bunch of my camera gear. We've got a Ferrari branded trickle charger battery tender, which likely costs 3 or 4 or 5 times more than its equivalent. And back here you get a capless filler and a Ferrari Cavallino to signify that you still got something special even though you don't have it on the cap. So enough about that. We know it's beautiful. We've got a gorgeous diffuser, all these delicate little vents and curves, and oh God, I could just look at this car all day, but we got to go drive because that is what makes these cars so special. Getting in, you notice there's no buttons whatsoever on the doors. There's just your little door handle here. And then over here, you've got controls for your mirrors and some of your infotainment stuff here and here. HVAC controls down here. You have controls for your roof. Sorry, I'm sweating. It is very hot. Windows and typical sticky button problems on Ferraris. It's just the way it goes. They all just get a little sticky. It's weird, but if you can live with it, great. If not, you can pay for new buttons. But let's get it started up. I love the key. The key is very special, even though it's a little scratched up. But what you do, key in ignition, turn it, and then engine start here. You don't have to hold it. And a Ferrari thing, the check engine light always comes on in Ferraris, and then it just sits and sits and sits while you panic and hope that you do not have problems, but it will go away. It's like the ECU just needs to take a little bit of time to think itself through, and then in like, you know, a few seconds, boom, it's gone. You can relax and go on your date. All right, then why don't we start with the roof up? So I'm going to push this down. So rear hatch is going to open up, and it's going to flip. It's going to flip 2 sections of the roof up, revealing lots of leather. That rear glass goes. And there we go. That's lovely because I really, really need some AC right now. Let's put our seatbelt on for safety. You'll notice it is blue matched to the deviated stitching, which matches this gorgeous color, and you get the blue buckle. I think blue is a good color for this kind of stuff. I've driven yellow ones, and my goodness, does a yellow belt buckle look like McDonald's? It's pretty silly. So, to get the car into drive, you'll notice there's nothing down here except for your launch control, reverse, and selection for auto or manual down there. So what you do to put it in drive is you just pull on the upshift paddle. If you want to go to neutral, you pull both of them together. So that's the deal. Then you roll off that throttle, and away you go. Before we get too carried away, let me show you the steering wheel. So, on the thumbs, you get a horn. It's not a fun Italian horn, kind of a bummer. You want that high-pitched Italian horn. Down here in the center, you have your blinkers. So you can click to engage, click to stop on both sides. Bumpy road mode down here, which softens the suspension. They are relatively adaptive. And here is your high beam flashers. Down here, you've got your little Menatino, wet, sport, race, traction off, ESC off. It just kind of adjusts how the traction control and transmission is going to operate. And buried in carbon fiber, you have shift lights, which we will see as we approach 9,000 RPM. We're going to be nice to our Ferrari. We're not going to put it in launch control, but we're going to put it in race mode, and we're just going to get on the throttle and see how it gets off the line. That's incredible. So It's a giggle factory. This thing is fantastic. The sound, the vibrations I feel in my back, I am very much enveloped in the experience, and I love the way it gets you off the line with just like the slightest kind of hint of wheel spin. So it lets you know that it's getting excited. It revs it out to redline. It's a non-invasive kind of traction control system to allow this thing to just get up and go. And because it's naturally aspirated, it doesn't have so much torque that it's just gonna blow the doors off of it. It's actually going to be able to hook up and go. That is why these cars are so special. Now, we're on a little bit of a bumpy road. We're gonna go to a nicer section of road soon, but I just wanna let you know that the best thing about Ferrari 458s is that they're more comfortable than BMW M3s. I swear, this is a softer, better car to drive around as like a daily thing. You don't have to be so nervous. This one doesn't have the nose lift. Normally that's down here, but it still operates just fine. So Ferraris typically go beep, 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 because at 80, they're like automatically programmed to say you're going 80, which, okay, I don't need to know. It's fine. I can hear that there's some speed involved with the engine. So in auto mode, I wanted to demonstrate kind of how it chooses gears. You know, this is an early DCT, so it's not quite as rampant and crazy about giving you downshifts with a tiny bit of throttle input. So it was upshifting for me while I was requesting some throttle. So that's why these paddle shifters are still really important to be able to tell it where you want to go. Because without that, you end up in a situation where you may be requesting a power, but just not full throttle, and it's not giving you the downshift. But out on the highway, this thing is a real charmer. Let's pull off here for a quick second. We're gonna put the top down and enjoy this as a Spider. All right, let's put this top down. Beautiful. And we'll put this little window up as well. That way we maybe have a chance at restricting wind noise. And you notice this is not very loud. It's a pretty quiet, docile experience. But when the valves open, wakes up. And it nails those gears. It's so good. And one of the beautiful things about it is that it's because of that valved exhaust, but what you can do is you can pin open that valve so it's just raucous and obnoxious all the time. sure no one's crossing the bike path. So what about driving experience? Is it a tactile, fun car to operate? Well, first thing you notice are the brakes. The brakes have a little bit of an old school carbon ceramic feel where you've really got to dig into them. There's not a huge amount of bite when you first touch them. They want a little bit of heat and they want some pressure. You can't be afraid to dig in. Second thing you notice is the transmission tuning. It's slightly out of date. Not a lot, but if you've driven an E92 M3, you know what it feels like. So that's why it's beautiful that you've got these paddle shifters. It's interesting though. They encourage you very much to be at 10 and 2, not 9 and 3. So, because the paddles disappear basically at 9 and 3. There's nothing down here. So it wants your fingertips way up here. And the steering. This is a fast ratio. This is a quick steering rack. So a little bit goes a long way. Now, that's fun. It means that you don't need to go hand over hand on a hairpin, but it does mean that your input might be a little greater than you expected. But then so is the throttle. The throttle is quite sensitive. That's this much movement. So you've got to be a little cautious because you could upset the car with the wrong gear in the wrong throttle position. Let's listen to this top down. That's about as much as you're gonna get out of it on most roads in populated areas. You know, you find your little stretch where there's no houses, you enjoy your noises, and you get out. Luckily though, even if the roads are slightly imperfect, this one's pretty good, but when they're slightly imperfect, this suspension still manages to hang on real tight, and this is the beauty of a 458 is the build quality is there. This doesn't feel necessarily like the fragile Ferraris of yore. This has a modern feel where you do feel like you could use it all the time, put some miles on it, and not be afraid of it falling apart on you. Sure, maybe some sticky buttons and things, but in terms of overall chassis, suspension, brakes, engine, everything's right there. Oh, and servicing the 458, I think this is probably known as one of the more reliable Ferraris. So if you're someone who's a little put off by maintenance, well, you're probably in luck with the 458, especially over the earlier days with 360 and 355. The valved exhaust does sometimes feel like it has a little bit of a mind of its own. Like, I know it's based on either load or RPM, but still, it would be nice if I just had a button to say, like, open it, close it. Like, let's just have that be done. So as a driver's car, it is really fun, really enjoyable. It's pretty tactile, great feedback from everything. It's just a little dartier than, say, a GT3. So if you're looking for a car that's forgiving, this isn't necessarily forgiving when you're pushing it really hard. It is going to ask a lot of you as a driver. You're going to need to have a little more finesse in your driving this one. A little more finesse in your driving than you might in a GT3. And as beautiful as a Porsche is, it does not look nearly as good as this 458, especially in blue. A non-red Ferrari, ugh, it's brave almost. So that's the 458 Spider. Yeah, this is, to me, the perfect modern Ferrari. I think I don't want to say went downhill. I'm not that pessimistic. But I am saying I think this is the peak of exceptional technology meeting tactile, ergonomic, and enjoyable driving experience. And the further we go, the faster we get. It's incredible how fast cars are getting, but I have to say, for me personally, a naturally aspirated, no turbos, 9,000 RPM, mid-mounted V8 with rear-wheel drive, no hybrid system, no batteries other than the 12-volt system just to keep the thing running. Boy, those were the days. And this is just at the point where these cars were reliable and well-built, and you don't have to worry too much. You get thumbs up from everybody because it is rolling artwork. Everyone is happy to see it. And when you get into it, even at mid to low RPM, it has a grunt that lets you know something's there. It sounds like you've let loose a hive of bees. It's perfect. So to me, if you were like an 8th gen Civic Si guy who found some money, this is the next step, right? You go to a 9,000 RPM Ferrari from your K20. Is that crazy? Is that nuts? These are always going to hold a bit of value because this is like the 997 of the Ferrari world. It's like, ooh, it was the right size, it was the right engine, it was the right layout, it was the right look. I don't think it gets a whole lot better. There will always be continuous improvement from the OEM, but here lies, for me, the top of V8 Ferrari motoring in the modern era. Thank you guys so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Don't forget to respect the drive, and I'll see you in the next one.